I am the Queen of England. You must give me your lunch money.
Why?
Because, it'll explode.
I don't know.
I'm the Queen of England. I know things.
Well, that makes sense. Here you go. Wait, Billy. Just because an authority says it doesn't make it true. Come to Camp Quest Northwest, where you'll learn critical thinking and science in a fun-filled week-long nature camp.
No!
Camp Quest Northwest can be found at campquestnorthwest.org. Donations and volunteers accepted. The devil is not real.
I'm melting!
So I was reading the Slog the other day, that's the blog of the stranger, and an evangelical Christian wrote in and told Dan Savage that there would be no use for abortion, for birth control. There would be none of these troubles in society that he sees everywhere if everyone just lived biblically. You know, they didn't have sex before marriage, if there was no gay people or gay activity. And you know, I think that really kind of sums up a bit about our topic today. Want versus is. You're listening to Ask an Atheist, 253-584-1480 if you want to call us. My name's Deanna Joy Lyons, and joining me today, the lovely and talented Mike Gillis.
Hey.
And Kate Farr, also known as Bionic Dance on YouTube.
Hi, everybody. How's it going?
Check out her channel. She wants you to look. She does. So, we've got a great show for you today. Let's take a look at one of our favorite segments. Mike, take it.
Yes, this is something we've been doing for probably about 3 months now. We like to call it Scripture Says What? Yeah, so basically what we do is we take a look at these holy books, these things that are held up as paragons of virtue and wisdom, and show you that there is some really funny, strange, and just plain scary stuff in these things. So one of the things that people mention to us a lot as atheists is that, oh, well, you're just talking about, that's just the Old Testament, that's all the bad stuff, you know, how dare you, you know, that stuff doesn't count. So we decided to focus a little bit on the New Testament today. Specifically, what does the New Testament have to say about slavery? And for you who don't know that, that's when you own a human being and get free labor out of them and can beat them and choose who their spouse is.
That doesn't sound like a very nice thing. What does this holy book say about that?
Well, I actually have 3 separate quotes. The first one is from Ephesians 6:5. Slaves, obey your earthly masters with respect and fear and with sincerity of your heart, just as you would obey Christ. The second one is from 1 Timothy 6:1-2. All who are under the yoke of slavery should consider their masters worthy of full respect, so that God's name and our teaching will not be slandered. Those who have believing masters should not show them disrespect just because they are fellow believers. Instead, they should serve them even better because their masters are dear to them as fellow believers and are devoted to the welfare of their slaves. And the third one's a real doozy. Comes from the actual Gospels, Luke 12:47-48. And it says, "The servant who knows the master's will and does not get ready or does not do what the master wants will be beaten with many blows. But one who does not know and does things deserving punishment will be beaten with few blows. From everyone who has given much, much will be demanded, and from the one who has been entrusted with much, much more will be asked."
Wow, that's interesting. You know, I've always heard that line about much will be demanded, and from one who's been entrusted, much more will be asked. I didn't know that was referring to slavery.
Yeah, that's actually Jesus talking there, and he's using beating up your human property as an analogy for responsibility.
Oh, well, I have nothing to say to that.
Yeah, it's what's so funny about that is that a lot of Christians really don't realize the stuff that's in their book.
Well,
and New Testament or Old.
And that last line, it sounds to me like what they're saying is that if you give, people will just keep on taking. It's almost a lesson to be lazy, to not give.
That's true. I mean, if people expect you to do a lot and you don't do a lot, then they'll stop expecting it.
It's kind of shocking because I don't think a lot of modern day Christians, and the majority of us, the vast majority of which, don't own human beings, don't advocate the ownership of other human beings, and would be horrified if they found out that one of their peers owned human beings. And it gets down to this real idea that a lot of these people toss out there that all of our morality comes from this Bible. It's exactly the opposite of that. If anything, it's our morality that informs the way we look at this book, and including the way a lot of Christian believers just choose to straight out ignore parts of their book. Because if you look at this book, the abolitionists during the 19th century, the people who wanted to abolish slavery in the United States, they were wrong biblically, and until about 150 years ago, most Christians agreed with that.
And when it says here that you're supposed to obey your earthly masters with respect and fear, just as you would obey Christ, I didn't know we were supposed to fear Christ. I thought he was all about love.
Yeah, it's funny how the Bible tends to define love. Love is just another word for obedience, and that's what's so funny about a lot of these people who tend to be very political, and they tend to try to marry their religious beliefs to their patriotism, especially when they talk about, oh, this isn't in the Constitution, and they scream about the Constitution. There is nothing about rights in the Bible. The Bible is all about obedience. It is all about rules. You are not entitled to anything except do what I say, or there will be consequences.
Yeah, to bring it around to, because I'm playing part of host today, and so I've got to emulate Mike. That line almost sounds like with great power comes great responsibility. To bring it back to Spider-Man. This is quite the interesting thing, because didn't the people who were for slavery back in the early days of the United States, they also used the Bible to justify slavery being good, as well as the people who were abolitionists, saying, and I think you're right, Mike, that your morality informs what you see in the Bible as good, and what you don't see as good, you say, well, that doesn't count. That's not something we're supposed to, obey like that.
Yeah, morality is an ongoing conversation that we have as a society, as a community, as a world. And this stuff is always changing, and it's always evolving, and it's really, when you look at this stuff that's in some cases literally written in stone, you really see how far we've come since the days of the Iron Age, that we are a lot better, that Christians now are way better than their holy book.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, morality cannot be set in stone. It has to be flexible. As far as I'm concerned, morality is actually the crossing of with or without permission versus hurts and doesn't hurt. If it doesn't hurt and you have permission, it's probably moral. If it hurts and you don't have permission, chances are good that it's immoral. But you cannot have a set of hard and fast rules, or you will end up hurting somebody, even though you're following quote-unquote morality.
There's an exception to every rule, basically.
I guess the thing that scares me the most in this, and it's in the second one, the line from 1 Timothy 6, is mentioning that not only are people expected to own slaves, this isn't something that Jesus is railing against. This isn't an injustice that he's opposing. He's actually, not only does he expect people to hold slaves, he expects Christians to own slaves as well.
Yeah, that's a little disturbing, too, because, most people, I think, have the idea that Jesus is kind of a socialist. He loves everybody. He wants you to be nice to the poor. He wants you to treat everybody kindly. But holding slaves is not a kind act. And, no matter how much people want to apologetic otherwise, it's just not right to own another person.
I don't know why that shouldn't be debatable, really, at this point.
Yeah, it's kind of like hurting children. Just not right. It's not an absolute moral, I guess, because sometimes you have to hurt a kid, maybe give them a shot for a vaccine to protect them. But, you're hurting them in a very minor way in a cause that is good for them. But anyways, let's get on to emails. We've got this interesting email, Colt from Aurora, Colorado. He says, as an atheist, I have thought long and hard about death and what happens after I die. I'm just curious on how other atheists feel about it.
Well, I am a lot less worried about what happens after I die than how I get that way. Because, let's face it, there are a lot of ways to die, and many of them hurt, and some of them are prolonged. Now, if there is nothing after death, as I suspect, well, then it probably won't bother me too much. I forget who the quote is by or what the exact quote is, but it was something about I was dead long before I was born, and it didn't mess me up at all. So.
That was Mark Twain.
Was it?
Go Mark Twain.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat as Kate, that I'm actually far more afraid of the act of dying than I am of not existing, because for that exact same reason, I didn't exist for a very long time, and that isn't pain. I mean, sometimes when I think about it, I'm a little scared of the idea of my consciousness being snuffed out, but there's really nothing I can do about that. I don't think that the way to address that fear is to make things up or to try to convince myself that it's otherwise, because reality has a way of catching up with you.
Yeah, and I think that kind of fits into today's topic, want versus is, because this is this is kind of a problem in the ongoing religious dialogue. And when we atheists versus religious people, we often try to point out that what we're dealing with is reality. And as much as we may want to live after death, as much as we may want to never die and have everything come up roses and baby sheep to snuggle on and lay around on a cloud all day and play a harp, we can't do that because we're pretty sure that's not what happens. But it sounds like want is very powerful. But what is, as far as we can tell, is nothing, a snuffing out of consciousness. And I like to kind of think of it as going to sleep. I don't know about you guys, but I love going to sleep. So I think death may not actually be so bad. It's like you just go to sleep.
Well, I mean, it depends on whether or not you dream, I suppose. I mean, I've certainly had dreamless sleep where I close my eyes and then open them again and it's morning. But, that doesn't sound nearly as much fun as dreaming, which I assume is what a lot of religious people think heaven ought to be like, where you are actually dreaming, you are fantasizing and living out things that would seem wonderful to you. Unfortunately, we have no evidence that that's real whatsoever, and so it may not be, no matter how much you want it. Want versus is.
Yeah, and this is something that I guess this is a topic that I've wanted to talk about for a very long time, and I guess it's because this is a sort of arguments that get thrown our way, and I guess let's start this out with a confession. I've always kind of, in the back of my mind, I've always wanted James Randi to lose his money. And if you don't know who James Randi is, he's a former stage magician. He's had a decades-long career investigating claims of the supernatural. He's called the debunker, though I don't think he likes that phrase. But basically, for the last 30 years, he'd appear on everything from Larry King Live to The Tonight Show, and he has this big sum of money. Basically, it's up to $1 million now, and the way to win that money is for somebody to prove a supernatural phenomenon or power under tight scientific observation. It's as simple as that, and so far everyone who's taken it has failed. When I say that I want him to fail, that doesn't mean that I'm going to pretend that his failure is really likely. I'm not saying that because I think he's wrong. In fact, I'm pretty certain that nothing supernatural exists in the universe, and that everything that we can't explain now and eventually will explain is going to have a naturalistic answer. That I really think that, let's face this, that every single time we've gotten the real answer to something that religion or supernatural or new agey people, every time they've made some sort of claim about this is why the sun rises, this is how a magnet works, this is how people get sick, it's always turned out to have a non-magic answer, and I have to believe that record is going to hold at some point in the future.
So that's what is, and what you want is for something cool and crazy and supernatural to be discovered.
Well, I have to admit, I agree. I also wish James Randi would lose his money. I would give a left body part to be able to fly or to shoot lightning bolts from my fingertips, but unfortunately, I respect reality more than that desire for magic to be real. That's the problem.
Yeah, and James Randi, I'm glad he's the dragon guarding that gold. I really am. That if anyone's out there, because this guy really, really takes this job seriously. And he's pretty much done every trick in the book as a stage magician. So when he sees somebody go up there and do their, BS charlatan act, he can usually figure out, okay, I think I know how they're doing this, and here's the thing to throw a monkey wrench into it. And if they're for real, they should be able to bypass this monkey wrench. I think it was a guy in The Tonight Show who claimed that he could move objects with his mind. And he was turning the pages of a phone book.
I remember that guy. And it turned out that the guy was actually using his breath from his nose, not blowing with his mouth, so it wasn't obvious, but he would sort of...
Yeah, he would
and
breathe
on it. And it was just enough that the pages would sort of flutter over. And James Randi went right in behind him just after watching him do it, and did a little bit of breath, and poof, there they went.
This guy was wearing a martial arts type uniform, yes? Okay, I remember him.
Yeah.
James
Heydrich,
that's the one.
And the simple monkey wrench is just to sprinkle some foam peanuts around the book, and suddenly the guy will not be able to move the pages without also disturbing the peanuts. And guess what? Suddenly his powers didn't work.
Yep.
So I'm glad that Randi is the guy doing that. And just because I'd like the Bigfoot or Chupacabra or Spider-Man to be real, just because I'd love somebody to have real psychic powers, doesn't mean I'm going to lower my standards so much and lower my standard of evidence just because I want that outcome to be true. And I think that's what a lot of people end up doing. I think that people get a mix of hope and believe, I think they get these two words really mixed up. If we want to look at the definition, hope is something that you want to be true.
Right.
Like when I buy a lottery ticket, I hope that this is a jackpot winner. I hope that this is something that will make me very, very rich. But what do I know? What do I really believe? Do you really believe every time you buy a lotto ticket that it's a winner? I don't. The odds are really long, and I'm not at all surprised. I go into it knowing the odds are long. So if I were to really believe that because I really want it, what if I just like, screw this, I got everything made, I'm going to quit my job, I'm going to, tell off my boss, I'm going to spend a bunch of money, and if you're wrong,
not a good way to live your life.
Well, that's the thing. On my YouTube channel, what I argue against the most, and anyone who watches me can tell you this, is faith, is belief without evidence. I mean, as far as I'm concerned, faith is a hope that has been taken so seriously that it's expected to be reality. And let's face it, it's not. And if it is, you should be able to show us that without our having to believe beforehand.
Yeah, the a priori belief, that's a bogus thing right there, that you have to want to see it before you believe it. And I think we've seen so many times where, I think one of my favorite examples online is somebody actually had a footage of a church choir singing, and as you can hear, choral music in a church is often really kind of tuneless, and it's hard to make out the lyrics, especially when you have like 400 people singing at once.
Yeah.
So what they basically did is they made up lyrics and wrote it on the top. So when you're told to look for something and you think it's there, you can hear everything. And there are people talking about Tom Cruise, please sit down. And it really sounds like it because you go in looking to see it, and
primed for it with your already expecting to see that or hear that.
Because what you want to be true really doesn't matter. And Keight has said it, and I'll say it again too, which is that the only thing that really matters in the end is evidence. That, like for instance, there are plenty of things that I wish were true and wish weren't true, and the opposite is the case. In the United States, more people can tell you who Justin Bieber is than Carl Sagan.
And that's just sad.
That's incredibly sad, but it's true.
Yeah. You're listening to Ask an Atheist. Give us a call if there's something that you think is true that maybe others don't agree with you. Maybe something that you hope is true and you're not quite sure. We'll be back right after this.
Tacoma Telematics wants to help you connect with your clients. We can give you a top-notch web presence. Tacoma Telematics can take your website to the next level and make it an essential part of your business marketing, but that's not all. Want VoIP? We've got it, bringing large corporation phone systems capability at mom-and-pop prices. We build intuitive interfaces to help you manage your resources quickly and efficiently. Take advantage of our holistic approach to make your business communications succeed effortlessly. At Tacoma Telematics, we're committed to personal and professional integrity, open communication, and long-term relationships. See us at TacomaTelematics.com.
Secular humanism is a non-theistic view of the universe built on a foundation of reason, science, and democracy. Humanists support intellectual freedom and critical thinking, and we hold that human beings are autonomous centers of moral development. The Humanists of Washington is the oldest humanist organization in the state and offers a community of free thinkers who educate the public and celebrate life. For information on how you can be a part of the humanist activities in the Puget Sound area, become a member of the Humanists of Washington today. Visit humanistofwashington.org.
Sigmund Freud said the voice of the intellect is a soft one, but it does not rest until it has gained a hearing. Whether you're at a point in life where you are questioning your beliefs, or if you've always been an atheist or agnostic, the Auburn Free Thought Society is a place where your own voice of intellect will be heard. You'll interact with like-minded people, engage in intellectual conversation, and share your experiences with others in the Auburn, Washington area. At Auburn Free Thought Society, we encourage critical thought and reason. For details, find us on Facebook and on meetup.com. Auburn Free Thought Society. Have real discussion and share real ideas freely.
If you enjoy the programming we create here on Ask an Atheist, please make a contribution with us. Your sponsorship helps keep our show on the air and improve the quality of our broadcasts. Donors get access to exclusive Ask an Atheist content. Don't make us beg. Please go to askanatheist.tv and contribute today.
Welcome back. You're listening to Ask an Atheist, 253-584-1480. Today's topic is want versus is, about the things that maybe we hope to be true but are not true. What really is? What is reality, and how do we deal with that? How do we figure out what is true or not, and what are our hopes? What do you believe in that's not true or not proven but you hope is true? Give us a call and tell us.
Yeah, this is the big thing, is that I'm a big geek, and I know that Kate's in the same boat as I am.
You should see the tattoos.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of science fiction, fantasy. I'm a big fan of comic books. I love Doctor Who. There's a lot of things that I wish were true. There's a lot of things that I think are complete bunk that I wish were true. For instance, I would be happy if Bigfoot were real, or the Loch Ness Monster. Just the very idea of how that would turn by anthropology and what we know about the migration of hominids would completely turn on its head if suddenly a large monkey man walked out of the Pacific Northwest woods.
How cool would that be, too?
That would be awesome. I mean, imagine what we could learn from something like that. And our psychic powers is that if I can read somebody's mind and I can actually go into somebody's mind, imagine what we could learn about neurological disorders that we didn't know before. I mean, this would be huge. It wouldn't just be like, oh, well, this dead loved one says that they love you very, very much and they want you to be happy. I mean, nobody ever found their dead loved one in hell when talking to a psychic. But, I mean, the bottom line is I love this sort of stuff, and I enjoy the sort of fiction where not only are people moving things with their minds, and there's like secret valleys in the Antarctic where there's dinosaurs.
Cool.
But on some level, on the back of my head, yeah, I'd love that stuff to be real. But you know what? What we want really doesn't matter. I mean, it really doesn't. All that really matters in the end is what you could believe. I'd love to believe I was a billionaire philanthropist and I could do this radio show without having to have a day job. I'm going to have to learn to accept the reality I'm in and bounce off of that. I mean, Kate, I'm sure you believe in you'd love to have a lot of crazy things you see in fiction be real.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big Star Wars fan. Anyone who watches my YouTube channel knows that. Should I show you the Rebel Alliance tattoo?
She has a lightsaber.
Hey, I have 4 of them.
Oh my God.
And I would love it. I would love it if the Force were real. I mean, again, to, appeal to your nerdiness, I identify as lawful good in D&D terms, and if I had the Force, well, I would probably be a superhero my own darn self. Can you imagine how much fun that would be? But unfortunately, as much as I want that, I have no evidence that any of it is true. And that's sad, but it's the truth.
And seriously, if there was a demonstrable way that I could go through a certain amount of training and be able to alter people's minds or jump really super high or have this mystical force guide me in a sword fight against some dude in black armor, if I could, move objects with my mind, how would I not want to learn how to do that?
Or fight the devil, for that matter.
I mean, any number of crazy things like that. I would love to be able to do that. The truth is, I would love if Batman were real. I mean, real Batman.
And that's possible, actually.
Yeah, that's a lot more possible than a lot of claims that even a lot of religious people make. I mean, if you really look at Batman, this is a guy who can fight like Bruce Lee, he can run like Jesse Owens. He's like a Sherlock Holmes detective. He's like good at everything.
But all of his quote-unquote powers come from devices he's created. I mean, Batman is a scientific hero. Even if the science is fictional, it's still, he's not using magic to do it. He's using mechanics.
And speaking of billionaire philanthropist, which is what he is. That's the kind of thing you'd want to be, and we'd want to be. I think people like you and I and Kate, we would end up being like Batman. And Steve Jobs actually was a billionaire philanthropist, or maybe not a billionaire, but definitely.
Oh, he was definitely a billionaire.
Definitely rich. And I was thinking about this. One of the things that he wanted, we were watching that interview with his Steve Jobs biographer. The guy's name is Isaacson, and he said, I think that he kind of felt that if you ignore something, if you don't want something to exist, you can have magical thinking. We talked about this a lot. He wanted to talk about it, how he regretted it, that he felt he should have been operated on sooner. And that's something that we've kind of talked about here a lot, is that Steve Jobs did pursue some alternate remedies, and that's a very interesting quote, that he kind of thought if he ignored it, it wouldn't be real.
This is a bit the opposite of I believe her name is Rhonda Byrne, who sells that hack book, The Secret.
Oh yeah.
The general idea is that we're all essentially wizards, and that if we clap our hands and believe really, really hard, that things will just work their way way out for us. That it doesn't really work that way. And it's sort of like what Frederick Douglass said, is that, he prayed for freedom for 20 years, but it wasn't until he prayed with his feet that something happened. That unless your want leads into you wanting it so much that you do something, it's the doing something that makes it happen.
Well, when they say God helps those who help themselves, what do we need God for?
Yeah, it sounds like I'm doing a good job on my own. It's like those bodybuilders who say that Jesus gives them the power to rip that phone book in half.
It has nothing to do with all those thousands of hours of weightlifting, of course.
Yeah,
it's just Jesus.
It'd be a lot more impressive. It was a guy who was like really super skinny. He just stepped out of the starving area of Ethiopia, and he ripped the phone book in half. Then I'm like, okay, maybe there's something to your magic powers. It's the same thing, like, oh, that Jedi has the power, the Force is using him to sword fight. But, all that sword fighting training, that helped.
Yeah, exactly.
I loosened the jar just a little bit.
Yep.
It's just crazy. I mean, and it really gets down to these arguments that you hear from whether it's a religious person or a new agey person, that they're like, oh, you just don't want to believe in God, and that's why you don't believe in. And it's like, oh, you really, I don't want to live in a world without a God.
Oh, I've heard that one.
That's actually something I've had to explain to the people on YouTube who come after me, the religious people who try to tell me that I'm full of it. They try to tell me that I just don't want to believe in God, and I say to them, no, convince me, show me evidence. I'm just not going to be convinced by faith or by good feelings. You got to present facts. You got to make faith irrelevant because I don't have to rely on it, and unfortunately none of them can do that, and that's why I don't believe. I'm not a non-believer because I don't want to be or because I hate God. That's got nothing to do with it. I mean, I might still hate God even if he was proved real, if the guy was a big jerk, but if God was nice, well, hey, but no one's ever proved it to me, and that's the problem.
Those are the two big questions that you get into, that you have to basically separate your conversation with a religious believer into those two halves that Kate's talking about. One is, does this thing exist? And two, even if it does, would I even worship it? Those are two completely different questions, and there is that assumption that this all-powerful being that I must worship. If the God of the Bible, this angry, capricious, bigoted, jealous,
psychotic, violent,
that its big solution to everything is to kill everyone except for one family every time somebody does something they don't like, I wouldn't worship that. I would live in fear of it. But I'm just saying, at the same time, that's irrelevant to my belief. Those feelings I have about how immoral that stuff is, that book is, to me, it all comes down to that one question. Do you have any evidence to believe that stuff?
And if you think you have some evidence for God or for the Bible being true or for maybe some crazy, wacky psychic or paranormal phenomena, give us a call. 253-584-1480. This is Ask an Atheist. Kate, what do you think about all this?
Well, I have to say that, I am a little bit frightened of the God of the Bible, but as I say, it's not that I don't want to believe, it's that I respect evidence. Again, want versus is. What I want is irrelevant. What you want is irrelevant. What anyone wants is irrelevant to the reality around us.
Yeah, facts are pesky things. They're very stubborn, and the truth is, a fact is going to be a fact whether you believe it or not, whether you know that it's there or not. Like for instance, my car is in the parking lot right now. My car is sort of a silver color. It's not blue right now. It's silver, unless somebody's painting it now.
Or stole it.
It's either out there or not, whether I believe in it or not. It's not, oh, that's just your... There are no other facts for me. I may have an opinion about the value of something, or whether I like something or not, or the quality of something. But in the end, there are basic facts that are really non-negotiable. Like for instance, let's talk about something I really wanted when I was a kid. You know what I wanted to be when I was a kid?
What?
I wanted to be a Ghostbuster.
Oh, that would be cool.
And I'm not talking about those guys with the night vision cameras on the Sci-Fi Channel who walk around a creaky house, and as soon as they hear some kind of like static on their radio, they're like, oh, and they turn into, No, that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a real Ghostbuster in both the sense of it being real and in the terms of the cartoon.
Peter, Ray, Winston, Egon.
Exactly like that. I wanted
and Slimer.
And maybe not Slimer.
He was a little annoying.
Oh, I hate comic relief characters. But I wanted a proton pack. I wanted a PKE meter. I wanted to drive around in the Ecto-1 and actually demonstrably catch things and save the day from like Gozer the Gozerian and well, maybe not Vigo the Carpathian, but I'll settle for Vigo.
Yeah.
I don't want to pretend that something is real just because I want that outcome so bad that the whole creaky house thing. I'm not going to accept that because the evidence is so bad that sometimes people want that outcome so badly that they'll accept such crappy arguments to support it. And when I'm talking about proton packs and that, I'm not going to accept this crappy version. I want Batman. I don't want Phoenix Jones. I don't want the cheap, GoBots version of my dream. I want real evidence. I want something demonstrable. I want psychic powers, but I don't want them to be real so badly that I'm going to turn a blind eye to all the frauds out there.
Yeah, it's like some people are kind of walking around in the creepy house right now with the, electromagnetic meter, reading the signals off of the power outlets and spooking at every creak in the house, and then coming out and telling you that they captured Vigo in their trap and they're going to go take it back to the firehouse.
Yeah, I want to see the Ouija board move without my hands on it.
Exactly. It's that kind of stuff. My degree of evidence is so much higher. I ended a friendship, it was more of an acquaintanceship, I guess, with somebody that I knew years ago I had to just completely unfriend them on Facebook because every time I posted anything about my feelings about religion, anything about my feelings about conspiracy theories or psychic powers or any of this stuff being bogus, they would just start whining about that. And some of their arguments were just so bad. And one of their arguments for the existence, or rather not the existence, but the divinity of Jesus Christ, was the alleged testimony of this alien abductee who said that the aliens had vouched for Jesus. And I'm just like, okay, I don't even know where to start with this. Okay, one, let's just assume that the alien abduction story is true. How do you know these guys aren't just like Jehovah's Witnesses with a flying saucer?
Yeah, how did the aliens know about Jesus? Maybe they got it from a really old book written by humans and copied down 7,000 times from each copy, so they got it wrong too.
Aliens can be idiot fundamentalists too.
Exactly.
It's just Pat Robertson, with the Enterprise. It doesn't change anything. I'm impressed that they've got a really cool ride. But
well, even if it turns out that these aliens are real, then they've probably abducted a very large number of people, any of whom could have told them about Earth's religion, and they could have incorporated that into the abduction experience. So even if the aliens said that Jesus is real and they believe in him, well, that doesn't make it so. Demand evidence. Don't take someone's word for it.
And get into evidence for that abductee thing, too, because even the Mormons aren't this aggressive. It's like, yeah, sure, they'll knock on my door on Saturday at 9 a.m., but they're not going to actually kidnap me, throw me into their flying saucer, and then tell me all about the good news.
That's right. If you think you have evidence, give us a call, 253-584-1480, and we have a phone call from our friend Jim in Woodinville. Let me cue you up here, Jim. Jim, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Hi there. Welcome to the show. What did you want to talk about today?
Just everything. I wanted to tell Bionic Dance that I am in absolute awe of her.
Oh, thanks.
I'm one of her subscribers, and when I grow up, I hope I have as many subscribers as she does.
Oh, never grow up. Trust me, it's hell.
And I'd give you my handle on YouTube, but they just use my real name, so I don't want to use them in the same conversation on the air. So
no worries, no worries. Thanks for watching.
Yeah, and I wish it was true that the good guys always won, or
I wish that
even if they got points for being good.
Yeah, oftentimes it's the opposite, and oftentimes the bad guys can win for a really, really long time.
Yeah, and so nothing's inevitable, even that the good are going to win or that the truth will prevail. The truth prevails because we argue persuasively for it.
Yeah, in the end, you have to actually want something so bad that you do something. You can't just sit back and hope that the universe will course correct for you.
Yeah, I think as much as I respect Dr. Martin Luther King, the arc of the universe does not bend towards justice. I wish it did. It only bends towards justice because we reach up and grab it.
I totally agree.
Wants and emotional arguments, I think, will always be more persuasive to us humans. We're emotional creatures than facts and evidence. And, people like us have to kind of recognize our own biases, our own tendency toward emotional persuasion, and our tendency to want to ignore evidence that doesn't align with what we want.
And it is kind of a fine line to walk between emotion and logic and reason. I mean, I'm not against emotion by any stretch. I'm just against using it to prove something's real.
Yeah. And then when I think about God, I was a believer for most of my life, as you guys know, and the thing I miss most about God was God-given rights. Our Declaration of Independence at least acknowledges a creator and states that that the creator gave us rights. I wish that were so.
Well, it certainly can be seductive, the idea that our rights are mandated and even enforced by a magical sky daddy who can smite you with his fingertip. I mean, I can understand wanting that, but, until someone can show me that it's real, I'm just not on board.
Yeah, and I can understand how it's seductive to believe that the universe has a sense of justice and that when you get wronged in some horrible way, that the universe is on your side. But in the end, rights don't come from God. Rights come from us, and if we stopped enforcing them, they'd go away in a day.
Actually, in just a few moments.
Yeah, it doesn't even take that long.
Those of you are aware of my personal circumstances.
Yes.
But, well, and it also does fall out that it turns out that if our rights or our expectations on morality is just a creation of ourselves, well, then we may be, there is no right or wrong, really. I was going to say we may be wrong, but how do you tell? The truth is that we're all just improvising, and that makes some people very, very uncomfortable, but what can you do?
Well, but the fact that humans are the creators of society, not deities.
And
that means we can create a society where rights are guaranteed.
Oh, yeah, but we constantly have to guard those rights.
Yeah.
It's not like the universe is going to be on our side. And it's always a battle. And it's always these things are getting chipped away at or added onto at any given time. Right. Definitely thank you for your call.
Thank you, Jim. Nice to talk to you. Good luck.
And thanks for subscribing to my YouTube channel.
You're welcome.
Okay.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
That was a great call there. One of the things that occurred to me is it's actually a better thing if there are no God-given rights, but just human-given rights, because God-given rights are kind of final and absolute. You can't negotiate them. You can't update them as more evidence comes along.
They're also really intangible, too, because everyone has a different idea of what God is, and when you can't actually go to knock on the Wizard of Oz's door and ask him what he meant by that, that's why people end up killing each other over this stuff.
Yeah, it's not like God shows up with a megaphone and says, "No, guys, I meant this."
But there's plenty of people that are happy to do that on his behalf.
Oh, that's for sure.
All too true.
So it's really funny because we were talking about this hope belief dichotomy here. This connection between these two things, and I think this is what religion really exploits in people. I mean, there's this idea that somebody wants something so badly that you really don't have to convince them. I've heard this called the P.T. Barnum effect, where this works with psychics, this works with any kind of crazy, amazing thing, which is that if somebody wants something to happen so badly, they'll usually do most of the work to convince themselves, and you really, as a scam artist, or even as just a performer, don't really have to do that much.
Like when there's a psychic giving a reading, someone like John Edwards, and they'll say, "I sense that someone here lost an older woman." The person will stand up and say, "Yeah, that's my mom, Mary. I lost Mary." And then he'll go, "Mary wants me to tell you blah, blah, blah." That Barnum effect is where the person, the mark, is actually doing all the work, telling you all the secrets.
They're giving you information, and they're telling themselves that this person is pulling this information out of them. And
they might forget that they even told them.
You want this sort of feeling. You want to, like, oh my God, I'm touching the ethereal plane, and that this person who I left, and there's all these unanswered questions and things that I wish I'd said, and I wish I said I was sorry. I wish I said I love them, and you want to get a chance to get that sense of closure. And often life just doesn't give you that. Life is not like a movie where everything has these neat little tied up packages. And I think that sometimes people want that, and people can exploit that. I mean, one of the things that religion does is a Christian apologetics. And if you're familiar with apologetics, it's at its heart, it's a dishonest thing. Apologetics is basically when a theologian comes up with this elaborate, bogus, pseudo-scientific reasons for believing in Iron Age fairy tales. That they try to come up with, oh, this is the argument that'll demand that the skeptics will fall apart. But these are not for skeptics. The Christian apologetic arguments are for people who are already convinced.
They're just to strengthen their own belief.
Well, and it seems so often that they're there to shore up places where it turns out the scripture has been made weak by past discoveries, by science saying, oh, whoops, that's not true at all. And they go, oh, yes, it is. You just have to rework your thinking.
Yeah, or if something just really bad happens to them, and suddenly this idea of this just, loving God who's in control of everything, it seems like, well, why does this horrible stuff happen? And they're like, oh, this is so that they can continue to believe when their regular reasons fail.
If you have something you'd like to contribute to the discussion, give us a call. This is Ask an Atheist, 253-584-1480, and we'll be back right after this.
Billy, I'm a certified ghost expert.
Wow, that's so credible.
Billy, your great-great-grandmother says she loves you and to give me your lunch money.
Aw, anything for family. Here you go.
Wait, Billy! Extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence! Come to Camp Quest Northwest, where you'll learn critical thinking and science in a fun-filled week-long nature camp.
No!
Camp Quest Northwest can be found at campquestnorthwest.org. Donations and volunteers accepted. The devil is not real.
I know.
Did you know that not a single psychic or paranormal event has ever been reproduced?
Have you ever wondered about the effectiveness of faith healing, Reiki, or sports bracelets?
Was 9/11 an inside job, or is that all just another unproven conspiracy theory?
Come check out the Seattle Skeptics, a group focused on lively debates and a critical examination of pseudoscience, alternative medicine, and anything else that hasn't held up to the light of the scientific method.
Seattle Skeptics was created for those who require a higher bar of evidence than gut feelings or blind belief.
We're not contrarians or cynics, we just want to see the evidence.
And so should you.
Check us out at seattleskeptics.org.
That's seattleskeptics.org.
If you long to escape the religious bias on your television, if you love scientific shows, if you think that funny and thought-provoking are not mutually exclusive, then we'd like to welcome you to a network made with you in mind. Secular Video Network is an online source for free thinking programs. We feature a range of videos from Mr. Didi, The Thinking Atheist, and Richard Dawkins. While watching, you can participate in our live chat for engaging discussions. There is no cost, there is no proselytizing, just non-stop thought-provoking shows. So visit us at secularvideonetwork.com.
Join us after today's show at the Office Bar and Grill in downtown Tacoma. Offering a wide selection of tap and bottled beer, a full bar of your favorite liquor, and a taste bud tantalizing menu, come on down and shoot the breeze with the Ask an Atheist crew. Who can argue with your motives? After all, you're at the office. The Office Bar and Grill is at 813 Pacific Avenue in Tacoma.
You can advertise on Ask an Atheist on the radio, on our website, and in our podcast. People just like you who have the same interests are listening right now, just like you are, and thousands will download this podcast and listen to it later. If you have a product, service, or idea to sell, people here in the Pacific Northwest and people around the world, thousands will hear your message. Let us help you sell your product, service, or idea. Contact us at advertising@askanatheist.tv. That's advertising@askanatheist.tv.
Welcome back to Ask an Atheist, 253-584-1480. We have a little update. Our post-show get-together for food is not going to be at the office today. We're going to go to a lovely Mexican restaurant called Huelva a la Vida. It's at 54th and Pacific in Tacoma. They've got some fantastic food. Becky, who knows these things, told us that this is the place to go. So that's where we're going to be. So ignore that. Don't go to the office. Go to Huelva a la Vida, 54th and Pacific. So our topic today is really interesting. It's about what we want versus what actually is. And reality is so hard to get a grasp on sometimes. When we're humans, we're so full of emotion. We have such a hard time discerning sometimes what is real between what we want to be real. And Mike has got some fabulous things to say about this.
Well, we were talking a bit about Christian apologetics before the break.
Right.
And these are the times where somebody is talking about something that's entirely faith-based. The reason they believe it is is entirely faith-based. But they manufacture these other arguments to shore up their faith-based beliefs when they start to fail, when the regular reasons just aren't doing it for them anymore. Like, they just lost a loved one in a car wreck or something like that, and they have to keep telling themselves these pseudoscientific things, and these arguments are usually tremendously bad. They're so bad, in fact, that unless you're a believer that is predisposed to wanting to believe it really, really badly, they're just going to fall flat.
I've heard some atheists put it on other shows that they say, don't call and give me an apologetics argument like, for instance, the liar, lunatic, or Lord argument for Jesus, which doesn't convince anybody. He says, give me the reason that you believe. Why do you think that there is a God or a Jesus or a Shiva?
Well, and I like to ask, why should I believe? If I will only accept what I can see either with my senses or what can be proved in such a way that I don't need belief for it to be true, how will you convince me that this is real? And a lot of religious people will try to sidestep actually proving it to me, insisting that belief and faith are all you need.
Yeah, and sometimes the people wanting something so badly, they want this outcome so badly that they throw out some bad arguments. This one comes from Lee Strobel, who's written a lot of these books like The Case for Christ, all these books that are trying to give this scientific answer. It's also interesting to note that when he did his investigation, the only people he talked to were evangelical Christians.
People who believed the exact same thing that he already did.
He never threw any hard questions their way, and he's like, oh, wow, that's just... It's like, come on.
I think the term is confirmation bias.
It really is, that you want to see something, and guess what? Surprisingly, you do. And here's one of the arguments Lee Strobel uses, and I want to ask you guys to restrain yourself, because this is what is so bad. It isn't a question of, can you determine what's wrong with this argument, but how quickly can you, and how many ways can you figure out how bad it is?
I love this game. Go for it.
Okay, here it goes. This is an example. The apostles were willing to die for Jesus, so what they believed must be true. After all, who would die for a lie?
Well, okay. Someone who's wrong or a complete chowderhead.
Yeah, it's... I mean, there's two answers that you can give to this. Both of them have two words. One of them is suicide bomber, and the other one is Heaven's Gate.
Yeah, I mean, most Christians, because, face it, let's focus on Christians, because that's who we talk to and who talk to us all the time. They would tell us that those suicide bombers died because they believed something that wasn't true. But they don't even consider that possibility with the apostles of Jesus. That they were
somebody who's willing to die for something. This doesn't prove anything other than they really believed it.
Right.
It doesn't make it true. That's a thing that they wanted it that badly. Therefore, it must be true. There are plenty of people who die in wars with other people who feel the exact same way about their belief system. They both die. Does that create an impasse? Are they both right?
Well, I think the way I'd put it is that sincerity is not reality.
I think that's a good point. I mean, just wanting something really badly enough. These apologetics arguments, it's a really good example of that want bleeding into what they think is. These things are just, like I said, they're aimed at people who are already convinced. I mean, these things, somebody wants something desperately enough, so it must be true. I'm not going to say these people are stupid. I never say that. I think this is a very human thing.
Absolutely.
That there are really, really smart people, and usually the smarter they are, the more elaborate and intangible and vague their apologetics gets. I mean, there are people like Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, the guy who wrote the Sherlock Holmes stories, also believed in fairies and spirits.
Yeah, didn't he do seances and things too? He spent a lot of time kind of believing things that weren't true and promoting those things. Whereas Sherlock Holmes was probably one of the more skeptical characters you would ever find.
Yeah, and this guy, or Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, I think they said when you adjust it for inflation and, currency, because he was in England, of course, he probably spent about $7 million on this spiritualism movement.
Oh my goodness.
I mean, that's a lot of money to be giving towards mediums and people who think they can talk to the dead. It's really crazy. And again, I think sometimes we have that confirmation bias that Kate mentioned before, is that we want to believe things that fit in with our ideology, and we want to disbelieve things that don't. You want to believe good things about people you like and bad things about people you don't. Like, for instance, this might not come as a shock to a lot of you guys, but I really don't like Pat Robertson.
No.
It's easy for me to want to believe bad things. Like if one of you guys had came up to me, oh man, I just heard that Pat Robertson embezzled all this money from a charity.
I believe it. Yeah, I don't like him either.
I don't like him either. It's so easy to have that knee-jerk reaction. Just go, oh, it must be true because he's such a jerk. It's, you gotta go, whoa, gotta hold back. And it's especially the stuff you want to be true that you gotta be extra skeptical about. And the bigger the claim, of course, the more evidence you need. The extraordinary claims require extraordinary evidence. So I'm gonna want to see sufficient proof of that first.
Knowing that you have this weakness to want to see something bad about someone you dislike, you can override that instinct by saying, okay, I want this to be true, so I better check it out extra thoroughly.
Yeah, I mean, there are plenty of things I want to be true, but I want to believe what is actually true.
Yeah, that's the big thing, is what actually is.
Well, I think that's what separates us from the God believers.
Well, we can't make that thing too high. We're just as capable of doing this stuff as anyone else. I think that we make more of a conscious effort.
True.
But, we can fail just as anyone else. I can tell you that there have been times someone brings me a news story that I want to be true, and it's so easy to be a knee-jerk reaction. Like I said, the Pat Robertson embezzled money. How easy is it for you guys to believe that right off the bat?
It's pretty easy.
Yeah.
We have to be careful with this stuff, and we can't fall down the same trap, because a lot of people will say the same things about us, that we're immoral, that we did this horrible thing.
And they want to believe that about us. Well, we have a call about truth, and if you'd like to call and talk to us, our number is 253-584-1480, and I'm pretty sure the name here is the 13th Heathen calling from Texas. Are you with us, 13?
That I am.
Well, hello there. What did you want to talk about today? I see the subject here is truth.
Are y'all familiar with TED Talk?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There was a really good one that I caught the other day. I actually managed to catch it on YouTube, of all places, that was talking about truth, and more specifically what it feels like to be wrong. And it was a great talk, and what it really comes down to is being wrong doesn't feel like something. It feels like being right.
That's awesome. I love the way that sounds. And, figuring out that you're wrong, I don't know about you guys, but when I've realized that I was wrong about something, it's the worst feeling ever. And you want to just, throw yourself in front of a bus. You're like, no, I was wrong.
It's embarrassing.
But it really does depend. I mean, there are certainly scientists out there who have said that, gosh, I'm wrong, and that's a good thing because I've eliminated a possibility and now I'm closer to the answer. So there are some ways to feel good about being wrong.
And this is something I can throw out to everybody, including the caller here, is that, have you ever been in a scenario where you've been proven wrong in a public place and you just have this desire to hold to your position just to save face?
I can't
There actually is a really big influence of that. I mean, societally, nobody wants to be the person that, gets the wrong answer on the test, or that, is proven wrong. Nobody wants that. Everyone wants to try and be the person that's right. And simply letting go and saying, you know what, I was wrong, especially when it's something that you've built your whole life on, whether it be, faith in magic and Wicca or religion or what have you. You don't want to be that person that has to sit there and admit, yeah, I'm wrong, sorry.
Exactly. It's embarrassing, and especially if you're somebody who's doing a lot of public arguing and people are going, oh, wow, this person's great. I think a lot of times, and I've seen a lot of politicians do this, whether it's Sarah Palin is really guilty of this. When somebody corrects her on something, she just accuses everyone else of being sort of out to get her. So I'm going to go to the places where people tell me that I'm great, and I can see people in any position of somebody who speaks publicly or has an opinion publicly that, oh, the public is mean to me, so I'm just going to go to my fan base.
But one thing I have found is that, counterintuitive as it is, and so many things in life are completely counterintuitive, if you find yourself completely wrong in public, what you should do is just say, yeah, well, my bad, I messed up, my bad, let's move on. And it actually feels pretty good to do that, and people usually don't end up giving you a mountain of crap for it.
Absolutely.
A famous writer once said that if you don't know how to pronounce a word, say it loudly.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for calling us, 13th Heath, and we've got another caller. We're going to move on.
Y'all have a good week.
You too.
Right.
Thank you.
Catch you later.
Okay, now we're going to talk to Cal in Montlake Terrace, a local call. Cal, it says here you'd like to talk about if there's a psych test for separating believers from skeptics.
Yeah, and the reason I ask this is my sister and I both left the fundamentalist Christian sect, and she went totally New Age, alternative medicine, easily hypnotizable. She visited Sai Baba in India, etc. And I'm, just the opposite, I think. Skeptic, atheist, all that sort of thing. And I'm wondering, is there a psychological profile test or anything that would...
I've never heard of anything like that, though that's actually a story I've heard a lot. Somebody who comes from a really, really religious family, that either you make this hard break or you just simply find a new drug.
Well,
you have an addictive personality, and you just simply go, oh, okay, well, I'm just going to rechannel this into a different kind. And you mentioned Satya Sai Baba.
Yeah.
Oh my God, that's one of Sam Harris's favorites, and he's, I don't know how to sort of describe him, but he's an example of somebody who has YouTube videos of his supposed miracles, all of which match the miracles of Jesus, and they're really unimpressive. But again, people want to believe.
Yeah, I've certainly heard of people who have been in one religion and then move on to another, and eventually what they will say is, it doesn't matter what you believe, it only matters that you believe. And I'm just like, really? Really? Because as far as I'm concerned, what matters is what's true, regardless of what you want or what you believe.
And I think that what you believe is actually pretty important. Like, if, for instance, I think I can fly like Superman, it's important to know if that's true before I step off the Empire State Building's observation deck.
Yeah, I'd start with a stare.
Yeah. Start small and test empirically, work your way up, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I'll do some Googling, though, Cal, and I'll see if I can find something later on.
Like
Maybe we'll post it on the Ask an Atheist page.
The Minnesota multiphasic, whatever that test is.
Oh, yeah, is that one of those personality tests?
Yeah.
Okay, it's not the one that gives you the ITNPXYZ.
That's Myers-Briggs, I think.
Okay, yeah, that's the one that's woo. And I know one of them's definitely, it was kind of made up as they went along, and everybody depends on it, that ITNXYZ.
Yeah, that one's pretty wooey.
Yeah, that one's made up by a couple of people. But
people get excited because people like a machine to tell them stuff about themselves. It's kind of like a
They
horoscope in a way.
It is. It really is. It's like, you're intuitive. Oh, really? Cool. I'm intuitive.
You're a really creative person, and you're a great leader.
Yeah. Well, we've got to go, Cal. Thank you so much for the call.
Taking my call.
Have an awesome day. We'll talk to you soon. And watch that Facebook page for Ask an Atheist. I'll post something if I find it.
Okay.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Well, it looks like we are getting pretty close to the end of things here. It has been a wonderful show. You've been listening to Ask an Atheist. I'm Deanna Joy Lyons. We've had the lovely and talented Mike Gillis.
Hey.
And the lovely and talented Kate Farr, Bionic Dance on YouTube.
Please subscribe.
Music by Chris Coleman. Call screener today is Darren Gavin. Production assistants Rebecca Friedman, Rich Lyons, Sam Mulvey, and Christy Ressler. And our post show today is going to be at Huelva a la Vida, 54th and Pacific. Ask an Atheist is an NEDM media production.